Hey friend, some new research is helping us understand the relationship between loneliness and depression. And if we can understand what's going on there, we can change the way we relate to loneliness in a way that might reduce risk of depression. And I think that's so exciting. So often we have thought about loneliness leads to depression. They kind of fit together. What we now know is it's not that simple. It's not simply that when you're lonely, you become depressed. There's actually something in the middle there that changes the way loneliness can actually lead to depression. It's that relationship between us and loneliness that if we can change that, then we can change the rate of depression for people who are lonely. What do I mean by that? When we feel lonely, we can start to tell ourselves rather dark stories about that loneliness. We can feel like, I'm so alone and this will never change. I'm always going to feel this lonely. And that darkness, that feeling of hopelessness and helplessness, that is what leads to depression. Loneliness is actually just a feeling. It's a feeling that's not all that different from hunger and thirst, in that it's our body's cues to say you need to do something to take care of yourself. When we're hungry, we eat. When we're thirsty, we drink. When we're lonely, it's our cue to go see some sense of connection, to call a friend, to go visit a neighbor, to have that sense of belonging with somebody. It's a really adaptive thing to feel lonely. So often in our world, though, when people feel lonely, they use it to tell themselves rather dark stories about themselves. I'm a loser because I'm lonely. Nobody likes me. And then that sort of life sentence feeling of I'm always going to feel this way. And those really painful, judgmental, harsh stories, that is what can lead to depression for people who are lonely. It's not the loneliness itself. It's the feelings that we have about the feeling of loneliness. That is what can be the on-ramp that leads to depression. So what if instead of feeling harsh and dark feelings about loneliness, or trying to push it away and pretend it's not really there, which doesn't really work, what if rather we created space for that loneliness? What if, I know this might sound a little quirky, what if we made friends with that lonely part of ourselves and provided some compassion to that lonely part? It would change the way we thought about it. And if we could be warm towards the loneliness and thank it for giving us the information that we need connection, if we could be grateful towards it rather than hating it or telling ourselves nasty stories about who we are because of it, it could really change things. If we could see that loneliness as kind of a warm, more vulnerable, tender part of ourselves that just needed care. Let me give you 4 strategies that would be a way to deal with that lonely part in a way that provides care and tenderness. The first is to be present with it. Instead of distracting or numbing ourselves away from the loneliness, we would take a deep breath and say, I'm aware of that loneliness part and I'm holding space for it. You place your hand on your heart and you remind yourself, I see you, I'm here for you. It sounds sort of odd to be warm towards your lonely part, but trust me, it makes such a difference. Secondly, that you ask it what it needs and you give it what it's asking for. Ask your lonely part, what do you need? Often it will say connection. And can you give that lonely part some connection? And first of all, with yourself. Does it need some rest? Does it need some energizing? Does it just need some care? What do you do for a friend when they are lonely? Do you say, let me take you for a walk? Let me grab you a hot beverage? Would you like to journal and just explore your thoughts? You can help ease the burden of that lonely part by just connecting with it and first letting that lonely part know that you see it and that you give it that sense of belonging. Third, that you would invite connection in a small way with another person. You would feel that loneliness and that you would Tend to it. As you pass somebody on the street, you would say hello and enjoy their warm greeting back. You open doors for others and you just enjoy their smile as they go through first. As somebody makes coffee for you, you might engage them in small conversation, or find somebody to make coffee for and that you just chat with them as you are taking care of them. You just soften the edge of loneliness by some small moments of connection. And 4, that you would ask for support when you need it. If your loneliness feels overwhelming, that you reach out to a trusted friend who can help you feel less alone. And sometimes it's really hard to ask for help. And sometimes when you ask for help, you kind of back in and like, do you have a minute? And you ask so casually and you give them such an easy way to say no that they don't hear the urgency, they don't hear the pain. So when you ask for help, can you be really clear? And I know this takes a risk, but can you be really clear to say, I'm really struggling and I could use your help? Can I have 10 minutes of your time? Simon Sinek says we really only need 8 minutes of another person's time when we're feeling like we're really struggling in order to feel less lonely. And if you could ask for 8 or 10 minutes of another person's time so that you can just explore or process it with them. Often just the act of expressing that struggle to somebody can in itself have you feel less lonely because you have a chance to feel seen and heard. Remember that it's okay to feel lonely sometimes. In fact, it's really important that you feel lonely sometimes, just like it's important for you to feel hunger and thirst. I want you to feel lonely sometimes because when you feel lonely, that's a cue from your body for you to take care of yourself. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're weird. It doesn't mean you're always going to be like this. It just means you need connection. And when we meet that feeling with compassion and with care, it means we have an opportunity to take care of ourselves. As the research from the University of Hong Kong would say, when you feel that feeling of loneliness, please avoid telling yourselves nasty stories about how it's going to be like this forever or about how you deserve it. If you can not tell yourself that nasty story, but say, thank you, loneliness, for showing up. I appreciate what you're saying, and I want to take care of you. That can be a real game changer. Take care, friend.